So, today we will cover the seventh, eighth, and if we have a little bit of time, we may kind of look into the ninth house, the ninth bhava. Okay. So, the thing with the seventh house is we saw this last time, right? um, that basically this is the karaka for the seventh house is Shukra, right? And this is a very important house because even though you may think that relationships are kind of not important or whatever, but the 10th house has a huge connection with the seventh house. So, what happens in the seventh house has a huge bearing on, what you manifest in the 10th house, which is one of the highest kendras. So, you cannot undermine or belittle the importance of the seventh house. And a badly placed seventh lord is going to make your life hell on earth. Uh, As it is, the seventh lord is a maraka, and because it is the sixth from the second, we already saw that. So there are many negative stuff with the seventh lord, but it's the Rudra avatar of Shiva. Rudra is where Shiva is kind of, the sun has set. It's like asta lagna. It's asta means setting of the sun, and literally it does mean that you are Lord Shiva is meditating. And is Deborah here? Because this is really important. um you know if you are in the planetary period of the seventh lord, or the anything, if your planet's in the seventh house and if you're in the planetary period of that, there is only one solution to the seventh house. That's Mahamrutyunjay mantra or the
Mhm.
Mrutyunjay mantra. Okay, we covered that right at the beginning. So but I will put it up, the mantra and the audio, if you guys want. So just let me know. Okay, now the seventh also means the starting of the journey and onward. Remember, in we see the punya chart I mentioned last time, where we see death planets here. The punya chart is drawn traditionally where somebody has passed away. We need the time, we get the time, and we analyze the seventh house, whether what the onward journey is going to be like. If it is afflicted by malefics, then you are going to one of the talas or narkas, one of the seven talas. So it's kind of a really difficult, um, it's a very difficult and very sensitive part of the whole, one of the most sensitive bhavas. The other thing is also, it's also rules sight, and blindness comes from there. And Mantreshwara, in Faladipika, mentions about, that should the effects, he gives the effects of the seventh lord placement, if it is in the same rashi, or that is in its own sign or in its exaltation, it will, the native will derive full happiness through his wife and marriage. But that is obvious, right? Because if you have a seventh lord which is in its exaltation and not with any conjunction with any malefics, it's absolutely gorgeous. You want the seventh lord to be clean and clear and not afflicted at all. And the same goes with, is if the seventh lord is in sixth, eighth, or 12th, or there is a dainya parivartana. You all know about parivartana is a mutual inter exchange between, if dainya parivartana happens when the seventh lord, let's say, has gone in the sixth or the seventh, sorry, or the eighth or the 12th, and the lord of the 12th has come in the seventh. So this is like a parivartana. And but that's a dainya parivartana. I mean, typically we learned earlier sessions that uh, you know parivartana is one of the highest things, and the most positive. But yet we will find that a dainya parivartana across any of these houses, 6, 8, or 12, the wife will be sickly, because that means a lot of the seventh has gone there. And however, it may not, it will be kind of, may not apply to own house or exaltation. So we will have to analyze the whole chart before we make a complete judgment. But bear in mind, any kind of dainya parivartana is a little bit tricky, especially for the first marriage. So for example, the first marriage is given by the first, the seventh lord. And later we will learn how to calculate the number of marriages, and which second marriage or second long term relationship, which house we go to, and things like that. Then excessive libidinousness and death of wife. If Venus is in the seventh, native will be exceedingly uh, libidinous. And if Venus conjoin a malefic in any house, it will cause loss of wife. So that is obvious. I mentioned that earlier. So you have to be very careful about Venus, because bear in mind, Venus is the Karaka. It's the Dara Karaka. Dara Karaka is nothing but the spouse significator, or Karaka for the spouse, for both the sexes. I know for women it is Jupiter. By and large, we do take Jupiter for children and spouse and boyfriend for women, and Venus for men. But the overall Karaka for everyone is Venus. For both the sexes, it will be, it's like an overriding overall. When we talk of spouse or a boyfriend or long term relationships, we will always talk about Venus as being the overall Karaka. So you have to understand and get this distinction very clearly. And 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 of course, if it is a woman, we will always look at Jupiter in her chart. I mean, sometimes we will find that the woman's Jupiter is fantastic, and even in the D9 chart it's amazing. So, and the Venus is like, okay, so that would trump it. The a good Jupiter will trump it. So you have to sort of again see how things are, take it, analyze everything before we come to a judgment. If seventh lord is in its fall or combust, or in an enemy rashi, one will acquire sick wives and many wives. The trouble with the seventh lord in its debilitation or combustion, or in an enemy rashi, is the trouble is the native will want to keep trying, they will. And that's why in wake of that, it's a disaster. The relationships will end very badly, and so the native will want to keep trying until they get it right. And that is why they will have like multiples, and you know all kinds of deviations will come in relationships. Now, as I mentioned before, Parashara mentions that the seventh house, the seventh house has a lot to do with the blindness or loss of sight, because the sixth house deals with diseases. So the seventh house deals with the disease of the eye, and particularly the loss of sight, eye power, and focus. Okay. Now, here I'm going to bring in seventh houses like house of Libra. Yeah. The Aditya, we did earlier that it's like the sun in Libra, the setting sun. The Aditya associated with is Pushan Aditya. Now, Pushan has a very great significance. Its Pushan is all to do with, like, you know, marketplaces. Remember, I said that seventh house and Libra is a lot to do. The sign Libra is about scales. And where do we use the scales? Only in marketplaces, to weigh things and to kind of sell, and buying and selling, and import and export. When we talk of import and export, then of course being abroad, and so one of the significations of the seventh house is also being abroad. If you have lagna lord in the seventh house, your fortune will open up abroad. So you have to take that into consideration. Now also, Why Pushan, the Aditya Pushan? Because Pushan is a god of meeting and about relationships, and he's responsible for journeys, onward journeys, roads, marriages. Roads is where we take for markets, moving goods from one place to another. And marriages and alliances are his domain, and feeding of the cattle. Again, that's all to do with food and grains and buying, selling, and why is the broken teeth or tooth issues or associated with Pushan? Now, if you recall, right at the beginning, I think it was a second talk we did about Lord Shiva's first marriage with Sati, and how he was how Sati walked into the funeral sorry the yagna, or the fire ceremony, and of her own father's fire ceremony, the yagya, because Lord Shiva and Sati were not invited by Daksha, who was his father-in-law. And so Shiva got really annoyed because he could see that Sati was upset. And so she went uninvited to Lord Daksha, that is her father's. And she's like, he's my father. I don't need an invitation. But he treated Lord Shiva and Sati really badly. And so Sati, out of like disgust, walked into the funeral pyre. And so basically, she created her own funeral right at the what was meant to be a really auspicious fire ceremony, where all the devatas were present and all the rishis were present, and one of them was Pushan, who was in charge of one of the ceremonies. And so Lord Shiva got so angry because he had lost his wife Sati in for the in the fire, that he created Veerabhadra, the great demon, and he basically pushed Veerabhadra to completely destroy Daksha and his whole sacrifice and everybody who was present and who were party to it. So Pushan got his all his teeth knocked out while he was eating from the oblations, that is, eating some of the, they call it the prasad, but it's like after the ceremonies are over, we distribute sweets and things like that, which were originally offerings to the devtas. So basically, he got his teeth knocked out, and that is the significance of Pushan and the linkage with his lost teeth. So any tooth, dental issues, it will show up in the seventh house. So you have to remember this in a when we do medical, when we are in the seventh house dasha, even or seventh lord or planets in the seventh house, if you have too many malefics in the seventh house or aspecting the seventh house, then maybe you will be plagued by like dental issues, and so there's something to be aware of, that but this is a youth, that is why there's a big linkage with teeth and sight related to the seventh house. Now, it also relates to in Prashna. Often, if you have a retrograde planet in the seventh house, or the seventh lord in the first house, which is great for getting things back, lost items being found again, lost love being found again. The only trouble is that if you have seventh lord in Lagna, then the spouse tends to be like literally sitting on your head, like wa- chasing you everywhere. Now, there's a lot of Parashara has lots of significations, or rather lots of dictums to do with the seventh house, but we won't go into that all of them. In your spare time, feel free to read about it and find charts which kind of correlate with you know some of the combinations. So if sun is in the seventh, moon therein will cause association with such a female. Often sun in the seventh is kind of, because the sun really belongs, is a karaka of the first house. It is not sun ideally you want in the 10th house, in great digbal, in great strength, or in lagna. But sun in the seventh house is like sun in Libra, so it's like in its debility, and it's not very fun, to have sun in the seventh. And of course, you'll attract a very powerful spouse as well, very fiery and very haughty and very proud. That is one of the significations as well of the sun in the seventh. And so it will denote association with marriageable girls or barren females if Mars is placed there. So he talks about various planets being placed there. If you have Mercury placed there, Mercury in the seventh house is ill at ease. In the house of Venus, Mercury, remember, Venus debilitates in Virgo. So Mercury, obviously, it's Mercury who's responsible for Venus's debilitation. So, Mercury indicates harlots and mean females and females belonging to the traders' community. So, if you have an exalted Mercury in the seventh or Mercury in a friendly sign, then maybe you will attract a super young, bubbly girl as your wife or a long term partner, or somebody who's working in who's a merchant or working in sort of trading and buying and lending. And if you have Jupiter there, hello, hello, anyone, any questions? No.
No, ma'am.
Okay. And if you have Jupiter in the seventh, then you will be attracted to pregnant female or wife of a Brahmin. The native likes to have these kind of associations. Base females and females attend their um, I think curses, I don't know, I'll have to check, are denoted by Saturn, Rahu, and Ketu in the seventh. Saturn, Rahu has got great directional strength in the seventh house, but that does not mean life is going to be easy. We will do some examples and you will see. Mars denotes female with attractive breasts. So again, like I said, you can read about all that, and but the main thing you have to remember is you have to analyze the seventh house and seventh lord and aspects on the seventh house very, very closely to get to understand the effects of it. And Okay, let's move forward. And evils to, again, loss of spouse and evils to a spouse if seventh house or its lord is conjoined with a malefic, the native wife will incur evils. I think that's kind of we all would gather that. Okay, again, this is a repetition of one of the sutras earlier. It is relegated to the sixth, eighth, or 12th, and if seventh lord in its fall, the native's wife will be destroyed or she may die early. I mean, this is all kind of, pretty much common sense here. One will have, I would strongly encourage you guys to find examples of, let's say, one will have two wives if seventh lord is in its fall or in a malefic Rashi along with a malefic, while seventh house or the seventh Navamsha belong to a eunuch planet. We all know what the eunuch planet is. I have covered it. So one of them is Saturn. Find the other two. Okay. If Mars and Venus are in seventh or Saturn in seventh, while the Lord of Lagna is in the eighth, the native will have three wives. And there will be many wives if Venus is in a dual Rashi, while its Lord is in an exaltation, as the seventh Lord is endowed with strength. So we will come to this. Remember, Venus is in its exaltation in Pisces, in Meena Rashi. So, and if that is there, it is all dual. These are dual Rashis. So often you will be attracted to multiple wives. um Later we will also see that if you have Gemini rising, then there is a dosha of Gemini, that one of the greatest doshas of Gemini. Each ascendant, each lagna has a built-in problem. And it's across the board. It's not like, hey, maybe I can improve or do maybe a better placements will be scot free. No, if you're a Gemini rising, it's fantastic for you as a human being. But as in terms of relationships, you have a Venus dosha. All Geminis carry it no matter what. So you need to be aware of it. We will come to that once we finish the bhavas and the lords of all the, going into each of the houses, and then we will cover the nature of each ascendant. Then the timing again, please do explore. There's loads of thing here. I have put it to make it a little bit more exhaustive so you guys can, I don't want to go into each and every sutra because that will take a lot of time. Okay.
So
Now,
now, I mean, some of this seems quite cultural and out of date, really. I mean, obviously, the specifics of it are a bit
yeah.
marriage ages and stuff. It's all a bit out of kind of
Yeah.
context now, I'd guess. You have to take this with a pinch of salt, I guess.
Um, yeah, I think so. Some of it a little bit pinch of salt, but you'll be surprised how much of it applies. It really does apply, especially when we start to weave the whole thing together
Well,
properly.
to the extent that 24 would end you up in prison if you tried to act that one through. Uh,
Yeah, okay. Yeah, true. So anyway, let's have a look at Clark Gable. we
oh, right.
know we know he's like the king of Hollywood, right? Gone with the Wind, it was one of my favorite films.
Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn.
Exactly, that was the famous last words. So here, as you can see, everybody awake here. Look at his seventh house, it's got moon there.
Ah,
Now moon is a very lusty, um you know graha. Moon is kind of, when it comes to the seventh house, Moon and Venus have a bad rep. Now, even though, you cannot get away with it. Okay. As we already saw, there is, that particular sutra, that particular sutra we saw, if you have, you're going to be a little bit lusty. Where was that? I forget, somewhere along where you have Venus in the seventh house. There was somewhere along, it's there. We just went through that. So you cannot get away with it. So if you see, he is, what's his lagna, guys?
Sagittarius.
Good. And how many planets are in Sagittarius?
3.
Yeah, and look at the moon. And can you see how, I mean, there's also another little thing that I want to say, that is, look at the duality. There are like 4 planets in dual signs, which is like staggering, right? And the
Hmm.
thing is that the seventh lord is, even though it's very well placed in the second house, that's a very good yoga. Okay, later we will learn when we do the yogas that seventh lord in the second house is called Shri Manta Yoga. Shri Manta meaning somebody who will be rich, who will benefit from an alliance. Okay, so that's very important to know. Now, but his, um I think his Mercury is combust. If you see, Mercury is 29 and the Sun is 19. So you see what, just now we did a dictum that if you have a seventh Lord combust, then it's a problem. You will keep trying, and trying. One of his favorite wives was Carol Lombard, and she passed away in an air accident. She was flying with her mother. So you see, this is like a whole string of, I mean, of course it's Hollywood, it's sort of goes with the territory. And look at him, he's quite a handsome looking guy. But hey, what I'm saying is that literally you have to analyze it dispassionately, because it all plays out very, very well. The charts will always, um kind of the Venus in Lagna, and the only saving his beautiful, I mean, all his success and all that is truly because of that great Jupiter in its Mool Trikona, the Lagna Lord in Lagna. that's like a great blessing from Lord Shiva. Absolutely no doubt about that. So you can't, you know, I mean, in spite of what's happened in the seventh house, you cannot take away the fact that he had huge blessings, in terms of his contributions and things like that. Okay. So let's move forward. Okay. So here, should the Venus be in the ninth, that is in the fifth house, while Rahu is in one of the said houses, that is in the fifth and ninth? Again, this is all, please try and test it out, because, this is quite a lot there is to it, they'll go through various combinations and all that. So it's a good read. Let's move to, we all know who this is, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Ozzy Osbourne.
Yes, exactly. And look at examine his seventh house, guys. Look at where his seventh lord is. Any ideas? Anything?
Is it
Hello?
the
It's in
third house?
Sagittarius.
Yes, it's in Sagittarius with Jupiter. Remember what we said, that even though he's got that Rahu, a malefic, in the seventh house, okay, analyze it. I'm encouraging you to analyze chart for what it is, as in, there are many, you'll never get a clear cut chart, and especially when it comes to relationships, it's impossible. Relationships are not clear cut. There are so many millions of shades of gray within them. So here you can see that, Rahu is a malefic, and yet he's had a very successful relationship with Sharon. And of course, you may question about their openness of whatever, their alliance or whatever, but the fact is that he seems considerably happy. Now, of course, he's like a bit of a crazy guy anyway. We can see that the Ketu in Lagna with Venus, but bear in mind, like Clark Gable, he also has Lagna Lord in Lagna. Can you everybody see that?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
and that's a huge blessing. Now, typically, if that Jupiter wouldn't have been there, in its own sign in Sagittarius, Mool Trikona, if it was just Mars there, he would have been not been able to really settle down with somebody. That Jupiter has given him, it's a beautiful blessing to have that Jupiter there. Even though that Jupiter in the third house is in Maranasthana, which we will again come to later. But that Jupiter is really a benefic, it's his saving grace, you know, um, because the seventh lord is with that Jupiter. So do you understand? Like, and he has got into all kinds of stuff. Look at look at his lyrics and, Black Sabbath. I mean, oh my God. Just thinking about it kind of rattles me. um I got rabies shots for biting the head of a bat, but that's okay. That bat had to get Aussie shots. I mean, only Ozzy Osbourne can come up with that line, right? Yeah. So you can see this Rahu in the seventh house. Is everybody with me, or everyone's gone to sleep?
I mean, his
Yes.
partner
We're
Sharon.
here.
His partner Sharon is a very powerful woman, and she's a very powerful woman in her own right. That's Rahu in the seventh, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And
So I'm just
Rahu
saying,
in the seventh also gets directional strength. In Rahu is flourishes in the seventh house.
when it I know um these descriptions may be dated. When it mentioned baseless woman, would that be like sex workers? If a woman, if your partner is a sex worker or in a profession that's a bit, does that what that means by baseless?
Yeah, it would include all kinds of women. I wouldn't just kind of undermine and say, oh yeah, it's just prostitute kind of women. But
What do
yes,
they? What does
yeah.
it mean by baseless? Does that mean a woman who's been divorced or doesn't have a partner, or what does it mean? You know, what does? I'm not saying that's what it means, but these interpretations were written like thousands of years ago. So obviously, you know,
Yeah, but
it's
they
got that.
still, yeah, but they still hold true, because when you talk of baseless women, I mean, some women are gracious. So it won't be a woman who will be gracious. Some women, it'll be more of a woman who will be like kind of looking from jumping from man to man, from relationships to relationship, and who's kind of a bit of a free being, that kind of a woman. Now, that necessarily may not be that bad. But if you look at the sharp contrast of what the rishis or the sages were trying to say, versus a woman who's kind of very her character, and she's honorable and she's got strong character, so from contrast that, and then you understand what baseless means. Are you with me here?
Not really. Sorry. Men can jump from women to women or man to man depending on their sexuality. I mean, what's it saying? That the person is unstable mentally or not loyal? Is that what they mean? I don't know what you mean. Sorry, I
No, I
don't
mean,
know
they're
what you mean.
quite, their character is a little bit questionable, is what it really means. Their
Well,
ideals
just
are
on
not.
like,
Yeah, their
you mean
ideals.
dishonest or
Yeah, I mean, their
sorry? You mean
ideals may not be very high, and that's sort of
okay.
a thing. But yeah, I mean,
Sona,
yeah, go on.
Sona, may I ask a question?
Yeah,
I
go
got a
on.
bit confused because when we talk about the kind of partner, we look at the seven lord.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
the planets
but
in the seventh.
okay, that's why I got a bit confused because I thought, and then you said also the planet. So basically, so the characteristic of your partner comes from the combination, if you have a planet, of the Lord and the planet.
Yeah, of course. First, you have to see where the planet, whether you have any planets in the seventh
Yeah.
house, because that we went through. Remember, we just went through that. If you have like Saturn there, then you'll be, or Rahu there,
Yeah.
you'll be attracted to kind of base, kind of. That's
Mm,
what the
mm,
issue
mm,
we were
mm,
having, defining that.
mm.
And if you have like Mercury there, then she'll be from a trading merchant background, so a businessman, or my daughter of a businessman, or working in business field, that kind of a thing. And she'll be young at heart, and that kind of a person. So you see, whatever the planet in the seventh house will bring you, will color your choices regarding your partnership. No two
Don't
ways
know.
about it. Yeah,
But on the same hand, for example,
yeah.
if you have Capricorn, seven Lord Saturn, and you have Mercury, so they are quite opposite. That's why I got this doubt. So
Yeah, but then
is a
you
kind of Saturnian or is more Mercurial?
I think you will have to take, I think the planets there will take a precedence,
I see. Okay.
So there will be
Mm.
times when she'll be very sort of like a little bit, young and playful, but in a Saturnian way, or she'll be very regimented when it comes to her business decisions and things like that, so you have to kind of
Mm-mm.
merge it together. Yeah.
Lovely.
Don't know.
Thank you very
Yeah.
much.
Yeah. Go on.
Just to follow up what was being asked there by Margarita. So the hierarchy then seems to be then the priority is given first of all to planets in the house, and then only then you're looking at the ruler as a sort of as support to that. Is that correct?
Yeah, but when I'm reading a chart, I will not just look at the planets. I will also go ahead and look at the rulers.
Oh,
Ruler
I'm
of the,
assuming that. Yeah, no, I just mean that you would obviously first look at the planets in the
oh
house,
yeah,
then
yeah,
look
yeah,
at the
yeah.
ruler. What
Yeah.
about are you ever looking at exaltation rulers, or is it just simply Rasi rulers?
What do you mean exaltation
Would
rulers?
you ever look at the exaltation ruler of the sign? Would that ever have a relevance?
Yeah, we said that, right? That if let's say you have an exalted planet in the seventh house, is that what you're saying? That if you have,
No, I mean if the ruler of the Rashi is obviously we're looking at the main rulers, but what about exaltation rulers of the Rasi? Does that give any rule and delineation, or is that not really looked at? Is that not part of the
No,
tradition?
that's not really. No. So
Okay, because
give
there's a
me
rule
an
in Hellenistic if you've got
So
a
can you
problem
give
with
me an
the ruler.
example? Can you give me an example of what you're trying to?
Yeah, well, in the Hellenistic astrology, I think they have an idea that if the domicile ruler is in some way terribly afflicted, the exaltation ruler can kind of step in and take over some of the responsibilities of the
Okay.
domicile ruler.
Okay.
They say it was
Yes.
combust. Say it was
Fantastic.
combust.
Okay, lovely. Fantastic. Thank you, Mark, for pushing the thing here. Now, remember when I said that look at the who's the karaka? Remember, I keep banging out karaka is a hand of God. Okay, it's basically karaka will change everything. Okay, so for example, the first house lagna, the karaka is surya, sun. Okay, so similarly, who's the karaka for the seventh house?
Shukra.
Exactly.
Venus.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So for now, if you have like horrible stuff like Saturn and Rahu, like this guy has got like Rahu there, okay? It's not an ideal situation. But think of who the Karaka of the seventh house is. It's Shukra, it's Venus. And my God, Shukra is in its own sign in Lagna, in Kendra. I mean, that is phenomenal, you know? The spouse will literally won't want him out of sight because a ruler of the you know, do you see how it is, how important it is that the shukra, the karaka for the seventh house, even though it has a malefic, it is in its own sign, it is very strong.
Mhm.
So you see, Mark, does that answer your question? That instead of the domicile, or exaltation to step in, we will look at the karaka because karaka
Right.
literally will change the entire dynamics in the
Right.
chart.
I'll have to go over your talk on that more to just
Yeah, you will
catch
have
up.
to go through
Catch up
because
on that, I think.
yeah, because
It's
I've
interesting.
been doing karakas very
Sorry.
yeah,
I've
yeah.
missed several weeks I've been away. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's
Couldn't
there
help
on
it.
the, it's all there.
Yeah.
So guys, karaka is the hand of God. Okay, you literally get it, because without that, without the karakas, we would do nothing would happen. So that's something you have to bear in mind.
Mhm.
Okay, so now let's move to
Interesting.
does everybody know this guy?
Versace.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and do you know that he was shot
Yeah.
right in front of this his mansion in Florida? And this is or Maya, yeah, and this is his the killer, you know, who was kind of mentally very unstable and things like that. Okay, now can you see what's in his seventh house?
Rahu.
Yeah. And even though Rahu is in its exaltation, but look what's there in his Lagna. Even though Mars and Ketu are the both the Lagna lords in their own sign, but it creates a yoga called Pishacha Yoga. You know, Pishacha Yoga is where you're kind of, when Mars is in conjunction with Ketu, it's called the Pishacha. Pishacha literally means the ghost. You know, the evil hunting ghosts are behind you. So basically, you know, so this is the face of one of the pishacha who literally gunned him down for no rhyme or reason. There are people who say that there were connections with the mafia, blah blah blah, but he had been on a random killing spree for almost 4 months. This guy, right? So essentially, if you see, there is that. I'm just getting you to contrast that what a wonderful designer and, you know, such great talent, but yet look at what the state of that seventh house is in. You know, this both the lords of the seventh house is in great strength. You know, Venus in its own sign in Libra in Multrikona, and Moon in its own sorry, in the fourth house. Absolutely beautiful. But the trouble is, of course, the moon is aspected by Mars and moon is aspected by Saturn, Rashi Drishti. So, of course, there is problems with that, and Graha Drishti of Mars. And, yeah, of course, all that is there, no doubt. But do you see that ideally he shouldn't have been any problems, but he did have, and that's, I think, his partner who said she was absolutely gutted. She couldn't manage at all. She went into a state of shock when he was shot. So, so this is like tough, because seventh house is also where we will encounter things, where we will come across what is in store for us. It's not just about relationships and relating, it's how other people will come towards us. If you have heavy duty malefics here, it's not going to be easy end of the day, no matter what. Yeah. Is everybody clear on that?
Can you
Yeah.
explain one more time, what does Rahu in the seventh house do to the native?
See, Rahu what do you mean, what did he do to the native?
What does Rahu do to the native? I mean, as far as the seventh house goes, because I think you were saying for Ozzy Osbourne, Rahu in the seventh was good for him.
See, if in Ozzy Osbourne's case, when we see here, that Rahu is actually good, because we have to also, it's a little bit of an advanced topic, but Rahu is also Ozzy's Atmakaraka, which is the king of the chart. It is a planet, is the point of the highest longitudinal degrees. For Rahu, we subtract 30 degrees because it goes retrograde. Now, this is a little bit extra I'm giving you. This is not part of the thing, but since you asked me, I'm saying why the Rahu, even though it's a malefic, it did not um, kind of give such dire results. The other thing is also, you have to bear in mind which house Rahu rules. For a Libra Lagna, the Rahu rules the very, very auspicious Mantra Bhava, the fifth house. So that is in the seventh. That is absolutely beautiful, And the other lord, the 12th house, is also Rahu rules, because the Virgo is his Mool Trikona. But the 12th house is by and large is not such a diabolical house. It's a quite a misunderstood house. Indeed, it is a house of loss and all that. But then, because Rahu is also his Atmakaraka, and because it rules the very auspicious fifth house, which is a Lakshmi Sthana, which takes higher precedence over if Rahu was in his case. Here,
Oh, okay.
Rahu rules Virgo, in the Mool Trikona of Virgo, which is absolutely diabolical. The 11th house, remember, when we come to the 11th house in the next few sessions, it will smash you. 11th Lord will always give you trouble. Okay?
Really?
So here, the Rahu is in full swing here, even though it's exalted. But also bear in mind that here there is a parivartana between Rahu and Moon as well. So ideally, he shouldn't have had this issue. But that, because all said and done, that Mars was also with the nodal axis, so that can create a problem. And I suspect that Sun is combust with Mars. So we'll have to check the degrees. Let's say here, where is,
Yes.
it's combust. Okay, it's like 1.5 degrees away. So there you go. So if you have one of the Lagna lords combust, and then the other one is Ketu, you're basically totally, uh, it's become malefic then, that Mars combust. It's not a nice scenario. So you see, you have to judge which houses, between the previous chart, where Rahu rules also the 12th house and the 5th, versus here, where the Rahu rules the 4th house and the 11th house. But the 11th house is far more diabolical. It will bring you a lot more trouble than the 12th house. Please bear that in mind. The 11th house is absolutely going to beat you up. People have a very romantic vision. Oh, it's beautiful gains and fun and friends and networks and all that, but it's none of that. You know, planets and the lord of the is there is a dictum, tano tano dandahara, for the 11th house. That is, you are going to get beaten up because it is the sixth house from the sixth house. It's called the bhavat bhavam concept. It's a very vital concept in Vedic. We will go through it, and I will anyway
Wow.
keep doing it and reminding you, because the sixth house, if you count from the sixth, you arrive at the 11th house. And that's a very, very, so sixth and 11th, there are no remedies for sixth and 11th, by the way, guys. You can do
no.
mantras, you can do seed sounds for every single house. But when it comes to the sixth and the 11th, nothing's going to work.
Sonal,
Yeah.
Camilla always told Camilla Sutton when I started learning, she said planets in the 11th aren't as malefic because they get better because it's an Upachaya house. She said the ruler of the 11th is malefic, like it's 12th from the 12th, 6th from the 6th. But she said planets in the 11th get better, don't they get better? Because it's an Upachaya house.
James, when we come to the 11th, we will do it one by one, which planets get better and which planets get, really smash you up, okay? No matter what, barring the sun, all planets will give you trouble in the 11th, okay? So when we come to that, we'll deal with it. We'll come to that. We are already now in the entering the 8th house. So we'll soon be there, okay? Okay, now one of the last charts, this is, everybody knows him. I don't know if you're aware of, this is the Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Now, I couldn't manage to get his chart as in the exact time, so I will have to find, I kind of misplaced it, but this is his chart because my Jyotish Guru this is what he has given in previously. So his rising sign is Leo. And where is his Lagna Lord, guys?
In the 7th.
Yeah, exactly. And it is, again, there we see Rahu. Now, this is an eclipse yoga, as you can see. Yeah, he was born under an eclipse. You can see.
Mm-hmm.
And in a very, like a pretty
I'd say the
exact,
degrees.
lunar eclipse, and Rahu in the 7th. So basically, but he is like one of the foundations, founding the great enlightened ascended masters, is absolutely a great master. And he had so much bhakti or devotion for Krishna and the whole Krishna consciousness, which he laid foundation for, that finally, when he left his body in Jagannath Puri, which is at the Jagannath temple, he literally, people, it's rumored that he just simply vanished. He merged into the idol of Jagannath at Puri in Orissa in India, because it's got one of the most iconic, it's like a dham, it's like a proper, it's like a pilgrimage center and one of the most famous in the country. And they hold they are the holders of the Rig Veda, because the Konark, the very famous Konark temple, the sun temple, everybody must go and visit it, is from there. And so he was kind of like an incarnation of Krishna and Krishna avatar. So absolutely amazing. But bear in mind, look at his chart. I mean, remember I said that the 7th house will give you your conditions, also how you pass away, how you, where you go, which loka you go into. So this is how he vanished, just the way he came over the moon eclipse, over the lunar eclipse. That's how he vanished. So this is a very great example of how, in spite of these malefics, he wasn't interested. For him, everything was all about Krishna, and he was one of the biggest devotees of that. So but this is a good example of how the seventh house plays out, and how people with who have lagna lord in the seventh house, this is very important. If you have lagna lord in the seventh, if you see any chart in the seventh house, um the lagna lord, you have to understand that these people have to tread very softly on planet earth, extremely softly. They can't sit there with like, oh, I'm going to get a house, I'm going to get like, I'm going to have a big family, I'm going to like, I'm going to just be like, they can't. It's not, that's not their destiny. They are destined to be travel light, absolutely be very, very lightly attached, or basically quite practice non-attachment. And they're meant to travel and wander, which is what he did. So bear this in mind. This is a great example of that. I'll find more examples with lagna lord in the seventh house to give you an idea that if you start to get yourself too attached, if you have lagna lord in the seventh, then what problems happen there. Okay.
Going back to, I know it's not what we hear about, but the first house with Ketu with the moon, and the
Yeah.
moon being the 12th house ruler, is that kind of an indicator of an ascetic with the Ketu emphasis and the 12th house being about, I don't know if that's true in the Vedic tradition, if it's
Yes.
monasticism and spiritual
Well, I wouldn't say
practices.
narcissism, but
No,
definitely.
no, monasticism.
Oh, monasticism. Oh, yeah, definitely. High levels of high levels of spirituality.
Right.
Absolutely, no doubt about that. That's a very, very strong. This is an enlightened master. Every enlightened master will have moon in lagna. That is the hallmark of, that is the first thing. And whatever the lagna, it'll be in the whatever the moon and the lagna, they will be in the same nakshatra. That's the number two hallmark. Then we have other dictums and other sutras for figuring out who's an enlightened master. We have the other, like other divisional charts that we will see and all that,
Mm.
but these two are the basic ones. Same nakshatra, moon
Uh-huh.
in lagna, moon in lagna. That is the biggest indicator that he's an enlightened master. But that doesn't mean you look at everybody's moon in lagna chart and then look and say like, wow, you're enlightened now. Well, no, it doesn't work like that. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So yeah.
And
Okay.
also, he's
Now,
got planets in gold. Sorry, son. I noticed that last chart. He's got planets exalted like Jupiter in Pisces, Mars in Capricorn.
there's no Pisces here. There's Jupiter in
Yeah,
Sagittarius.
Mars in Capricorn, Jupiter in Sag, and there's a
Yeah.
reception between Mars and Saturn.
Yeah. True.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's fine. But anyway, okay. So the eighth house. Now, what do we read from the eighth house? It is a natural house of Scorpio. And the Naisargika natural house is what it is. And its rulers are two, Mars and Scorpio, sorry, Mars and Ketu. And these two are absolutely at home in Scorpio. It is the natural home of Ketu. And that is also one of the reasons Ketu is the Matsya avatar, that is the fish avatar, who has great connection with Narad Rishi. And Narad Rishi in the ancient Indian scriptures has the ability to go through all the worlds, whether it is material, within seconds he will appear before you, through one end of the universe, across multiverses, to wherever you are. That is the beauty of that Matsya or Ketu. So Ketu is also, remember I said, very strong Agni. It's like a laser beam. So whatever Ketu, and it's also the moksha karaka. So this house then it's giving you a clue that the moksha, it's one of the key moksha houses. And what that means is that whatever you begin in the fourth house, early childhood, whatever you absorb, whatever the feelings, the psyche, your heart, what's in your Hridaya chakra, Rid chakra, whatever you absorb has to be cleansed constantly. And that cleansing naturally happens in Scorpio in the eighth house, which is through waste and cleansing and all that. So this gives you a very important clue that you need to keep cleansing this house. Without cleansing, you will not try not going to a toilet for like 5 days and you'll be like dead, you know. So that is what this whole house is all about, cleansing and transformation. And that's why there is no sign and no house that has so much of domain completely um, ruled by the idea of transformation as much as this house. There is no sign. Scorpio is has definitely, even you would say, oh, it's because of Mars. No, sir. It's Aries has cannot transform, period. The domain and the whole the thing of transformation, the idea of transforming existing status quo lies solely with Scorpio. There is no sign that can transform as much as a Scorpio. And the eighth house is its natural domain, it's where it flourishes. And that is also why it is the house of longevity, because it is called the Ripu Bhava. Now, Ripu also is to do with deaths, Rin, which is Rin, and Ripu is also connected with Shad Ripu, which is the six internal enemies, which we saw last time in the sixth house. Now, the Shad Ripu associated with the sixth house and the eighth house are, there's a little bit of a difference, that the six evils that are we find in the sixth house is something we have to overcome, and in the eighth house it's because of our own faults. You literally, we are responsible for it in this lifetime. But there's also, if you have planets here, then there's something that is coming out, you have to pay the debts in this lifetime. It's not like, oh yeah, last lifetimes, you know, I will pay it next lifetime. And you know, but you can't get away with planets in the sixth, sorry, in the eighth house. If you have it there, there is no turning back. You have no choice. You have to pay your dues. And that is the whole idea of this. And that is why, because in the process of transforming and process of paying your dues, whether they are, you know, kind of karmic, horrible things you did, or things that you yourself were responsible for, or whatever, you know, you, and that is why, that is what you need to transform, because once you pay off the karmic debt, then you are free. And that's the whole meaning of this, you are cleansed, you know. So that's how this house works. And that is why it's also called the Chatushra house, that which shelters, house or home, city, fort. And Durga is its you know, deity here. And it's Mrita Dhanam. Mrita Dhanam, Mrita means dead, and Dhanam means wealth. So it's the wealth of the dead, which we know it's the house of inheritances, death, taxes, inheritances, insurances, and taxes also to an extent fall in the sixth house, but more so here because it means shared resources and things which we are meant to pay. It's like a debt. We are meant to pay the government, we are meant to pay the council, we are meant to pay the social services, you know. So these are all the eighth house domain. And anything to do with borrowing, lending, so, and diseases of the anus, piles, they are all coming under this house. So this house is a very significant house. Without this house, the whole chart will be like, oh my god, you'll be stuck because there'll be no movement. Because remember, the moksha houses are very vital. Moksha is nothing but the water trine. What begins in the fourth house, you have to transform in the eighth house. And eventually, then only then can you enter Pisces, which is the house of moksha or ultimate liberation. So you are not going to get the liberation until this is like a post, you cannot, it's like you have to cross the borders, and you cannot cross it until you pay your dues and pay your debts and transform. And guess what? Who's the karaka for this? Saturn has to be. He's like the karmic debt collector. There is nobody better for the job than Shani. So you see how vital this house is. And that's why it's also connected with longevity, because it's like, oh, I've paid my dues now. What am I living for here? What karma do you have left? You need to go off the planet now. You don't need anything. That is the view of the shastras. That is the view of the ancient rishis when it comes to this particular house. So this house is very, very important, you know. And moon is, when moon enters this house, it goes into a marana sthana. That means it goes into some kind of like a death a situation. It feels like it's dying, and we can understand why, because the moon is also one of the givers of longevity. Moon wants you to live, to have babies, to be like, procreate and carry on and on, while Shani will say, hang on a minute, what is the point of this person's existence if they are not doing anything, if they're just simply enjoying and having babies? There's no, what is the point? And that's when you say, wow, why am I just having babies? And this is what this house attempts to answer. It answers by saying, you have a debt to pay to the rishis, to your teachers, by procreating, by having a son, by carrying on with the lineage. And this is the domain, this is the most vital point. This is the rin, they call it. In Sanskrit, the rin literally means debts, the karmic debt you owe to the rishis, to the entire lineages that you owe to. So never belittle, because everything, the bulk of Jyotish work, and in fact, I would say the bulk of all astrology lies in this house. Because why would people come to you if they were not absolutely shattered and suffering because they have some kind of a debt to pay and they don't want to pay it, and they are suffering because of that, and they have anxieties because of that, you see? So that is why this house becomes very important. Anyway, I think we may be up for time, so we will have to continue next week.
Aw.
Is that okay? Oh, okay, maybe 5 more minutes. Any
Just kidding.
questions so far?
Can I just, I mean, you've maybe covered this, so I apologize. I did say I've missed a bit, so I'm going to do some catch up. But I
Yeah.
thought I'd read a rival tradition about the Rahu and Ketu, about different being attached to different planets and signs. So like Ketu with Sagittarius, and is that, and Rahu with Gemini. I mean, I know that's in the Western tradition, but I've heard some Vedics say this as well. So I don't know. There's a rival tradition going on there of confusion on that subject.
There's no confusion.
Isn't
If
there?
you see, if you see, I created that slide. I think it was a part of the slide earlier in the past few sessions when we did
Okay.
the Mool Trikona and all that. There is no problem. Rahu's exaltation sign is Gemini as well.
Right. I see.
And yeah, and Ketu's exaltation is Sagittarius.
Right.
So there's no problem, Rahu does very well in the house, Mercury ruled houses.
But
You know?
so Rahu in
Virgo is in its Mool Trikona. That
Taurus
is Taurus is also its exaltation. But
Right.
it's but there's a distinction. We call the distinction we make by the Vedic tradition I follow is that when Rahu is in Taurus, it is in its Ayush exaltation. Ayush literally means a certain age, up till a certain point. after which it will, it will kind of, Ayush is nothing but longevity. So, but it is in its pure exaltation in Gemini,
Right.
So I think Rahu's Naisargika age, that is the natural ages we did. I think you need to go back to that
Yes. Okay.
lesson.
Fair enough.
We did was 45, 44, 45, and for Ketu it is 46. So it matures at that age. So once, let's say if you have Rahu in Taurus and it matures at around 44, 45, then it will give you that effects of that exalted Ayush exaltation of Rahu in Taurus at that age, though at those ages.
Okay.
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 Does that help? Yeah.
Yeah, I'll need to do some catch up. I think. Yeah, I've missed a lot.
Yeah.
Okay.
So anyway, where were we? So yeah, so this house basically will also indicate your not just the deaths, but um your nija dosha. The word Parashara has used for this is nija dosha. Nija dosha is our own faults. That's why we are born. If you have planets here, that means this lifetime you have a lot of debt to pay, and every single that debt, Saturn will ensure that those debts are paid off. And ideally you want the lord of this eighth house, if it is an exaltation, then you will lead a very long life, maybe because that's how it was ordained for you, that you have so much of stuff to cover, so much of rin to pay off, that you've got to do it, you've got to live longer, to keep breathing for that. Yeah. Now it
I have
is.
one question.
Yeah, go on.
You said that it is the house of depths. So does it mean if there are more number of planets accumulating in that house, more the depth is?
Yeah, of
Aditya?
course. Yeah.
Okay.
In any divisional chart, I mean, through we will come to like the karakas and the in Navamsh, you don't want too many planets in the eighth house. In the ninth divisional chart, D9 chart, in D60 chart, which is the house of past lives, you really don't want this too much of, so we look at it from many angles, but you really don't want ideally. And I mean, it's natural, right? You don't want to pay too many debts. With the fact that you have planets there, you'll be forced to go in. And that's why this house is also associated with occult, because I don't know if I mentioned, this is the house also of the where did it, yeah, here, the knowledge of past and future lives. So this is what another version gives: rin dana grahan yuge, yeah, yogi dharan. I think I've got the Sanskrit kind of all gobbled up here, but basically this is all about the knowledge of past lives and future. And that is why it's associated with, I mean, what is occult and mysticism other than an ability to be able to look into the future and the past? And that's why this house, because it is in such dire state of everything is hidden, and you want to uncover what is your shadripu, what are your problems, what are your rins, what are your debts this lifetime, that you go on this internal dark journey, a very scorpionic journey, in order to discover yourself, what you owe. And that's why this house has got such association with everything which is occult, mystical. Jyotish comes from there, which is why Ketu is a great overseer of this house, because it's in its natural element. Because Ketu's intuition, it has got such strong intuitive power, it can be anywhere anytime, know all the knowledge literally, like within microseconds. That's the ability of Ketu, you know while Mars would be like follow logical steps, study, it's strong Agni, so it'll study. But with Ketu, they will just know it. And that is why Scorpio's natural ruler, Ketu's natural home is in Scorpio. Its Mool Trikona, that is, its office is in Pisces, but its natural home is in Scorpio. So there is no house that transform as much. And to be honest, that's what we are all here for, transformation. So, and there is no sign who can transform better than a Scorpio. Anyway, I think we need to stop now for people to take a break. Is there any questions though?
Yeah, sorry, Sonal.
Yes,
I
go
was asking about
on.
the 11th house, but say for example, you've got Jupiter and Sag in the 11th house. Does that lessen the maleficy of the 11th house? Does that make it less malefic or make it more malefic, or does it depend on the chart, I suppose, as well?
Yeah, if we have to do this, let's do Coco Chanel.
Right, she's a designer, wasn't she?
Yeah.
Perfume manufacturer or something, wasn't she?
Yeah, exactly. Everybody, you can all come in, just unmute yourselves, and you'll I mean, she's one of my favorite charts to do, because look at, can somebody tell me about her, in terms of, like, I saw the film Coco before Chanel, or Coco, yeah. I mean, she grew up in really horrendous conditions, but she basically liberated women, completely transformed the way they dressed, from those really flowery, flouncy feathers, and like little huge skirts, layers and layers of massive skirts when she was young, in her teens and 20s, to completely, but through her designs, she could, the little black dress, the long black dress, and the pants, and the basic colors, absolutely phenomenal transformation for women, absolutely liberating. And that's all shown by her eighth house. Can somebody tell me where her Jupiter is?
But say,
Eighth house,
sorry,
Cancer.
House.
is it
Yeah,
got
and it's
Cancer?
exalted, right?
Yep, with Venus.
Yes, absolutely. And Venus is all about clothing. I mean, no matter what you look at it, but Venus is definitely all about like
Fashion.
clothing, and yeah, fashion, clothing, beauty, absolutely. And eighth house is all about transforming. Why do you think she transformed? You know, you don't have a choice. But she had a
But
very, yeah,
wouldn't
go
that have
on.
been good for her though? The transformation? I mean, that was good for her career.
Well, I think what do you mean good for her career? But she had no choice. I think she had to transform. If you have Lagna Lord in the eighth
Mhm.
house, you are not given any choice. You have to completely revamp, because eighth house will absolutely drag you down to your knees, make you suffer until you completely change your attitude towards everything, which is what she did. She had a really, if you see the film, she had a really traumatic romantic life, and relationships. And after that, after her one of her long term relationships, he died in a car accident. She could never marry anyone, she could never got over him, and she completely for rest of her life, she stayed in, I think, one of the fancy hotels. That was her home. She had a suite there, because she could not bear the idea of being in at home with someone.
Sonal,
Yeah, go on.
I heard that also Venus in the eighth house is not good for the spouse.
Yes, of course.
So,
The Lord of her 6th and
spouse
11th
died.
house.
Yeah.
See, exactly. See, guys, thank you. Thank you. Very well spotted. You see, this is what I keep saying. The Karaka is the hand of God, guys. The Karaka is everything. So here, if you see, the Jupiter is exalted. And Jupiter is karaka for a woman, for it signifies her, of course it's her intelligence because it's her lagna lord, but then Venus is the overall karaka for the relationships, and her relationships were an absolutely a touchy painful issue for her, you know. And if you see the karaka, overall karaka for the 8th house is Saturn, and that's in a parivartana. If you notice, can you see that parivartana of Saturn moon? Hello? Hello, guys.
Hello, sorry, Sonal. I got distracted. My son came in, so I didn't hear what you asked. Sorry.
So basically, this is a karaka.
Yeah.
8th house karaka is
It's a moon.
Shani.
Yeah.
And,
yeah, Karaka is Shani, yes. And he's in the
he's
6th
in a,
house.
yes, exactly.
Yeah,
and he's in a parivartana with the moon.
So, all right. So there is also, yeah.
Yeah. So you see, anyway, we will have to stop here now, guys.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Sonam.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
See you next time. And
Thank you.
join. Anyone, any questions so far?
No, thank you.
Thank you very Maybe we could do some more charts next week.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Is that Lena?
That's Deborah.
Oh, Deb. Oh, hi, Deb. Okay, sure, absolutely. And we'll I'll put the Mrityunjaya mantra. I don't know if I mentioned to you, were you there when I mentioned that?
I listen to it every day.
Oh,
So-
fantastic. But you need to
Yeah.
learn it, and because
Yes.
there is no better remedy for 7th house than the Mahamrutyunjaya mantra. It is, if you're in a dasha of a 7th house or 7th lord or planet in there, absolutely you have to do that mantra. Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, cool. Thank you very much,
you.
guys, and speak
Thank you
soon.
very much.
Bye.
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 Bye-bye. Thanks, Sonal.
Bye.
Bye.